Welcome everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. We're excited to dive into this topic today, tips for teaching hands-on butchery. And for those of you who have not been to a Lowdown before, this is our peer-to-peer speaker series. It's designed to help farmers, ranchers, butchers, and chefs learn from and with one another to drive profitability and sustainability in a system that is often stacked against us. So we're excited. We've done a few Lowdown topics on butchery, but this is the first one that's really for butchers and anyone interested in butchery. So really eager to get into this one. And these webinars are designed to be conversational, so we encourage you to drop questions in the chat as they come up. Meredith just shared here, we have some simple community agreements for every Lowdown, which really just boil down to be kind, be open. We're here to connect and support each other. And like I said, we'll start the conversation. We'll start the conversation with some questions that we have, as well as questions that some of you have submitted ahead of time. But as I mentioned, feel free to drop your questions in the chat as we go along. We'll keep track and make sure to get to as many of them as possible over the next hour, which I think is going to go quick. We got some really good questions ahead of time. So we have a lot to get into and jam into this time that we have together. So again, my name is Aubrey Gallegos. I'm the programs manager for the Good Meat Project. I am joined by my trusty partner in crime here, Meredith Rose, who's the program coordinator. You may hear from her a little bit. She's also managing the chat. So thank you, Meredith. All right, and I think with that, we're ready to go ahead and get started. So I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Andy Lane. Andy co-runs Hewn Farm in Ohio's Appalachian, the foothills of the Appalachians in Ohio.
Yep.
And Hewn is a two-family operation. It's shared between the Lane family and the Whartons. And they have a farm butcher shop where they teach pork, slaughter, butchering, curing, also occasionally getting into beef. And they take their classes on the road. So they teach multi-day workshops on farms all over the country. I know, Andy, you just got back from Maine. I saw
Yep.
Pennsylvania, Virginia, Kentucky on the list. And
Yep.
as a former art teacher, Andy has spent years honing both his butchery and his teaching skills. So he's here today to share what he's learned. And Andy, we're really happy to welcome you to the Lowdown.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Nice. Great. All right, so I'm going to dive into, I want to get in a little bit with your background. So I know you used to be an art teacher in a past life. Tell us a little bit about how your background in education has informed your approach to teaching butchery.
I think the the main point that we try to keep in mind all the time is the student. Like if you're teaching a class, the reason you're teaching it is for the student, not for anything that that you're necessarily going to get out of it outside of the satisfaction of, teaching someone something new. So it's not different from, little kindergartners learning about the primary colors to adults, learning how to hold a knife. You still need to make sure that you're focused on whatever it is the student needs to learn or wants to learn. With adults, it's slightly different because they have a better picture of what they want to learn. But Doug and I, when we're teaching, we also slip in things that people don't realize that they want to learn. So we add stuff to it. So it's kind of teaching children. They don't necessarily know that they want to learn certain things, but if it's taught in a compelling way, they receive it. And but anyway, back to the main point. It's really just the student. So anything we do, we actually had it come up this last weekend when we were at a workshop. We had a lot of irons in the fire because the workshop that we were teaching was for us in a different place, but also the place that we were teaching was under construction. And we had to make sure that even though it would have been easier to do some of the things behind the scenes just to make some of our life easier, it also would have made it very hard for the students to comprehend what actually happened in the process of the butchering or in that case, making sausage. So we had to really be conscientious about what those students we're getting out of the work we were doing and with them.
Mm. Yeah. And how are you kind of setting the stage for your classes as far as like even, are there things that you're telling students before they arrive to get them prepped? And then literally day of, how are you kind of setting that all up for everyone?
Yeah. So first, I will say that we keep our classes really small. We don't like here at our own shop, we limit our classes to 8 people. So they're very small. That's the first thing I would say about that. But
Yeah.
then as far as like before they get here, I send out sort of like a welcome email and give them all of the basic information. Like we live out in the middle of nowhere, so I give written directions, our address, and I also give up like an overhead map of our farm so they know where to go. Um, and I try to make that as inviting as possible. It's not like I tell them we're going to be outside part of the day. And so you have to keep track of the weather because the weather can change rapidly. And then I also make sure since we're going to be feeding them that we're aware of allergies or any, sensitivities. And then I also welcome them to bring food to share because even though we do teach butchering, we like our events to be really focused around food and good quality food. And people that are into this stuff are always making, they're either baking, they've gotten into sourdough or they make their own pickles or they make their own mustard or they brew their own beer. Um, and Doug and I just love the idea of people bringing that stuff to these situations so we can all share. And it makes it way more communal. It allows people to share part of their life with the other attendees, and it makes really fun connection points. Um, and then day of, I try to remember that when people are walking in through our butcher shop door, that they've never been here before, so and when you walk in, it is, there are hams behind me, and some people are very, sort of mesmerized and sort of like overwhelmed when they walk in the shop. So as soon as they walk in, Doug and I are over to shake their hands, show them where to put their stuff, offer them coffee or tea. There's usually we don't eat a ton of like a really heavy breakfasts, but there's always food for breakfast. Um, and then after that initial like push, then we just like let them wander around the shop and give them some time to like be
Mm.
comfortable in our space and chat up with the other people that are here. Um, but it's not a huge, I don't do a ton of prep directly with the people. I mean, I don't give them resources to read. I don't give them homework or anything like that. Um, and then once everyone's settled, we go around the room and we introduce ourselves and talk just a little bit about why they're here,
Mm.
because people have different motivations for coming to our workshops. And for Doug and I, it's really nice to know, some people really want to know how to um, humanely kill the animal, and that's like the most important thing. And then other people really want to know how to make prosciutto, or other people really want to know how to find the terrace major or whatever it is. So once we have that information from them first thing, it informs, how we direct some of the instruction later.
And with that, you're talking about the student-led approach. How much are you adjusting your plans to match what people come to the
It
classes with?
it's so when I was teaching, I had to learn how to write lesson plans, and the lesson plan, was the same for most of the kids, but then there were always these things called modifications. Certain kids needed something read to them multiple times, or certain kids needed more time to complete tests, or whatever it was. You always had to be ready to modify your lesson plan to certain students, or maybe the whole class, depending on what was happening. So it doesn't really change the lesson plan, it changes modifications, I would say. So if we really know that someone wants to learn how to sharpen knives or something, we will make sure that we set that time aside and focus and make sure that person is paying attention and aware during that time. And then there's time where people don't care about the knife sharpening, so we just cut that out for the sake of something else. So it's um, the structure of our class stays pretty much the same. It's just how we highlight and focus certain things changes along the way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And how formal, like you're talking about, lesson plans, are you guys actually kind of laying out either internally or with the participants exactly how the day's going to go, or do you leave it pretty open?
No, it's fairly structured. When we started, Doug and I had to talk like every morning. What are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And so over the course of years now, um, Doug and I know what's going to happen. It's not, I mean, there's a little bit of wiggle room depending on certain things, but yeah, we pretty much know the structure. Actually, this doesn't really matter, but usually I'll like set out an itinerary. This is all just
Hmm.
for a day one. And I usually leave it out so that the students can look over it if they want to. I don't, we don't have like a checklist for them or anything like that. We usually run down what the day is going to look like in the morning. Then we revisit it when we're eating lunch, just to kind of repeat what we did this morning, why we did it, and what we're doing next. And then we just kind of check in with them. Um, and because our classes are multiple days, there are people, that come in on day one and they're asking us questions about, well, how do I make bacon? We're like, well, we'll get to it. And then it kind of turns into a running joke, like you're jumping ahead. So then we just kind of poke fun at each other for, wanting to learn too quickly.
Hmm.
But it all works out. But the class itself is fairly structured in how we run it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, as someone who's been doing this for so long, there's a lot of kind of natural rhythms that you get
Hmm.
into that you may not even be fully conscious of, but someone just starting, it may be helpful for them to know things like water breaks, the balance between sitting and standing, or
Uh-huh.
lecture versus hands-on. What are
Yeah.
what are some things you've learned as far as all of that?
Geez, I probably could talk for an hour about all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what Doug and I have going for us is that there's two of us. So, I mean, for us personally, we check in and out, and we have kind of a rhythm that we've developed over time. Like, it's rare that one of us will teach something for the first time or like that we haven't taught in a while because we have a little dance that we do that we try to make sort of invisible to the people that are there. I mean, if you're paying attention, you'll notice it. So, if Doug's at the table teaching or showing something, I'm in the background prepping lunch
Mhm.
or getting other things cleaned up from what we previously did. And then and then he'll finish with something and then I'll walk up behind him and ask him a question and then he leaves and does something while I take over the instruction. So for us personally, we do that just for our own benefit. So we're both actually pretty introverted. So we need to be away from the crowd for a little bit. So we built in those times for our own sanity. Now, for the people at the table, we tell them early on, you can be as hands-on or as hands-off if you want to be for these workshops. If you want to sit down and watch everything and just ask questions, you can actually do that. Thankfully, we haven't had a class of 8 people that choose that option because that would be very difficult just for Doug and I to just butcher an entire pig and just have people watch us. Um, but in our shop where we're working now, or where I'm sitting now, we tell them, first thing where the water is, where to get drinks, if you want to stop and get coffee, if you want to go out to go to the bathroom. Um, and then people actually just choose. Like if there's something that we're doing or talking about, or there's a lull, they go to the bathroom. They're not going to walk out when we're teaching something that they want to see. And no one's ever gone long enough to miss like huge sections of work. We have comfortable stools in here. They can sit down whenever they want. Um, and then as far as like lecture versus hands-on, that's also built in to the structure of the class because there is actual work that has to be done. Um, so we can lecture for a little bit and then, sometimes Doug and I have to remind each other like, okay, one of us is becoming long-winded. We got to keep this ball rolling, or we won't get done in time.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, I would rather just be talking while working, which if you haven't done it before, I mean, if anyone in this group has ever tried to teach butchering for the first time, you realize it takes a minute to get the words to describe what you're doing while you're doing it. So, Doug and I have gotten good enough that we can use the appropriate words while we're doing it. When we were starting, we had to like stop working and then talk to the people and then continue working. But we've gotten to the point now we can, um, we can describe where our knife is going, the angle or whatever it is that we're doing, or the saw or whatever, while we're doing it. So it's the lecture and demo and actual work kind of bleeds together, but there are times where we're just talking or just working.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that because, butchery is one thing when you're just quiet and you're in your head and you're able
Hmm.
to think about what you're doing, but
Yeah.
having the muscle memory, pun intended, of
Uh-huh.
doing like actually doing the cuts and narrating it at the same time
Yeah.
and thinking about, the dynamics of the class and the specific questions that they might be having. Uh, is that something that like was there any point where you were like, I'm gonna practice myself and just talk out loud for myself, or did you have any ways that you figured that out, or was it just doing it over and over?
Honestly, yeah, most of that we learned on the fly. I mean,
Yeah,
we had been butchering before we started teaching classes, but again, there's a different skill set in doing it and talking at the same time.
yeah,
Um, and doing it, with some sort of competence so that the people watching can see what you're doing. We're not, there are certain skills where it's like you have to have the right words and you have to be able to show them at the appropriate time so that it can actually all become understandable. So yeah, most of that was just on the fly, I think. I don't have a memory of me talking to myself out loud while I was doing anything like that. But I was an art teacher, so I got used to I knew that was important to demonstrate things to children and using the appropriate language so that it all went together as like a cohesive lesson.
yeah.
Andy, real quick, do you have any like physical tools that you use? I see that you might be in your space now, but like, do you
Yep.
have a mirror or anything up top so people can see? Because you only get one kind of chance to see the cuts you're making, or is it just come gather round?
Well, so in our workshops, we're always dealing with one whole animal. So there's always another half. And our butcher table, which the computer is on right now, is roughly 6 foot by 6 foot. So we usually have one section on one side of the table on the other section. So there's always someone mirroring us. Um, and again, that's why our classes are small. So if you imagine that one person is cutting while Doug or I are cutting, then there's 7 other people that can either watch that person or watch us. Um, so they're always like if they want to see it, their belly's at the table. Like
Mm.
there's no um yeah, the mirror things are cool. And I've used those as an art teacher with classrooms, full of kids when there's 20 people involved. But at these classes, that's one of the reasons we like to keep it really small, is so that they're right there beside us watching what we're doing. And it's also kind of fun because we've noticed, like if we're cutting something, I don't, whatever it is, and we're explaining it, and there's someone cutting with us, the other students will often say, "Oh, no, he didn't say cut there. He said cut on the underside." Like so they kind of help each other, which, as anyone knows, like once you start teaching other people, it sort of galvanizes the information in your own head. So yeah, it's kind of like a group effort. And with pigs, we tell people, if you screw up, first of all, it's not your pork because it's usually ours or whoever the host farm is. And that's always a big joke. Like, who cares? It's not yours. Um, though sometimes it is, is theirs. And we always say, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to get some more sausage. Like, uh, if that's the worst thing, then, we try to alleviate this fear of making the wrong cut um, because it can paralyze people. Like I don't, where they'll go really, really slow. And if they're butchering a half of a pig, it could take hours and hours. So we try to, put them at ease. Like even if you screw up, it's not that big of a screw up. Even though it may feel that way. And that's also how you learn. And it's
Yeah.
yeah, we try to make it so. And if it's something that Doug and I like, if we're if we're trimming a prosciutto to be cured, and Doug and I, for whatever reason, really, really care about this definitely being a prosciutto, then he or I will do it. If we are really concerned, we're not going to put a student in that position to really screw up something that we personally would want. And if it's at someone else's farm and we ask them, is this something you really want to do? Like the host farmer that owns the pig, um, if they don't care, then we tell the students, well, if they don't care, it's try it and see if it works. But if they do care, then we often will have the farmer or the host actually do that work because it's a not fair position to put someone in to like if they're learning and you say, yeah, just do this exactly like I said the first time. Um, that's not a really fair position to take with with a new learner.
Yeah, and what a great message too for hopefully folks going back home and trying themselves to be able to hold both like, of course we value this meat and of course we want to get the best product we possibly can, but as we're learning, we may end up with a lot of sausage and that's okay.
Yeah, sausage is
Yeah.
fantastic. It's not a bad day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of like maybe things not going the way that you anticipate, or, there's a lot of sharp tools, like how much did you both talk about preparing for what, scenarios where something could go wrong?
Yeah. I mean, anyone that's cut meat for any amount of time knows that you're going to get cut at some point. Like that's inevitable. Um, and I know there were some questions about liability and stuff. I mean, we knew that from the start. We knew if we were going to be teaching people, they're going to have to hold a knife at some point. And we feel strongly that the knife should be very sharp. So we let everyone know the knife is very sharp. We just teach some proper knife handling. And if we're really paying attention to what we're supposed to be doing, we have them sign a liability waiver, which
Mm,
we often forget to do, but that's our own problem. But have them sign the waiver, show them how to handle the knife, tell them it's sharp, and tell them the Band-Aids are over here in the first aid kit. And just be careful. Um, yeah, we knew that was all part of the problem. I mean, not part of the problem, part of something that's going to happen. People will get cut. Um, and we put that right out in the open. That's like an obvious thing. We say it usually very first thing, and then we don't say it again until someone cuts themselves because we don't want to jinx it too hard. So
yep.
we've had many, many, many workshops where no one cuts themselves. And then we've had many, many workshops where, 5 people get tiny little nicks on their left hand because their right hand's not working as well as it should with the left hand. And
Mhm.
I mean, I don't want people to cut themselves, but it happens.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Got to fall before you walk a little bit.
Yep. It's part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for let me see, we have so many good questions here. Let me get into this one. So, somebody asked, so we had folks submit questions beforehand as well, and there was a really good one in here. They asked, how do we keep demos as hands-on as possible for larger animal breakdowns without being left with excess inventory? So they were saying like for pigs, if participant butchers, a whole side, very few people have capacity or money to take home an extra side, and we can't keep it all.
Right.
How do you handle the logistics of the actual meat?
Yeah. So to clarify, when we're butchering pigs, that pig belongs to one person.
Yeah.
So it's usually, or in our case, it belongs to our farm or it belongs to the host farm that we're working with. Um, so that's the first thing. We're not selling off part of these carcasses because we're slaughtering them on farm, so they're not inspected. So it has to stay for personal use. So it's not like, um, yeah, so that part of it is out of the way. And we tried for a while to do like 2 pigs at a workshop to give people more hands-on opportunity. And we found that it didn't really help the workshop at all. We
Mm,
thought more people would want to be like hands-on and cutting, but what you get into as an educator at that point is you have to get into a production mode of thinking at a certain point, and you just have to put knives in hands and tell them, cut this up, cut here, cut there, all that sort of stuff. So it became very problematic for us. So we just went to 1 pig for our workshops. And unless people want to pay a lot extra, we'll do 2 pigs, but we tell them that we can't do as much. So it'd be way more basic of a breakdown, yada, yada, go through all that stuff. Now, the one thing I can say that helps people, I think would help people is like if you're doing a beef breakdown, breaking down a whole beef as part of a class takes a really long time if you don't have uh, a honed in structure and you've got students that are ready to work
Yeah.
and learn. So if you're trying to teach beef classes, just do primals. Don't do a whole beef and do it in a series. Like, if you do the chuck and then as a day class or whatever, and then the rib as another day class, and just sell it as a whole series of beef butchering classes, that can actually that would work better. I mean, that's how if we didn't have the setup that we have, that's how I would do it. And it takes, I mean, our beef class is 3 days long, and I wish it were 5 days long because, I mean, even in that case, it's 3 days is still not as enough time, I think, to get through as much as I like to get through. So, um, I don't know if I answered that question accurately, but that's
Yeah,
what I would say.
absolutely. No, you definitely did. And yeah, like you said, it must be hard. It must be hard to pack it all in because as you know, you can spend your lifetime really honing your
Yeah,
butchery skills
yeah,
and trying to pack all that in and have people leave with some confidence, even in a 3 or a 5 day workshop, much less a, 3 hour workshop.
yeah, yeah. Most of those classes are more like, yeah, it's just an appetizer. Like it's not really full bites, which is fine for some people
Yeah.
actually. But most of our classes are, uh, 7-course meals, or we try to make them that way. And it's a lot, but that's why our workshops are multiple days.
Yeah, yeah. And as far as like on that topic too, as far as how do you balance getting people as much information and skills as possible without overloading them? Have you guys kind of figured out the balance there?
Um, I think we still default toward overload,
Yeah,
to be perfectly honest. And I don't, I don't, I don't know if that's the best, but I also know that we charge a premium for our classes, and I want to make sure that um, we're like leaving no stone unturned as far as information goes,
yeah,
and we will hit all the spots that people want to know.
yeah.
And again, there's things that we teach them that they don't even know they want to know. So uh, yeah, it's tough. I guess the other thing is just be observant of like the people. Like I mean, Doug and I anymore can tell when people have checked out. Like
Yeah.
toward the end of the day, it's like, you know what, we could do a couple other things, but we're gonna stop, grab a beer and eat dinner and regroup tomorrow because they're long days. Like um a 4-day workshop like the one we just did is, our class starts at 9 and gets done at like 6 or 7 p.m., after dinner and everything. So you have to give people's brains time to rest and digest what we've gone over. Um,
Do you
and all that
do
being
you
said, they're not going to receive all of it. Like it's not, again, that's another thing. Like it's not fair to expect someone that comes to one of these classes to remember everything. Like that's just not going to happen.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, it
yeah.
takes more than that. And and honestly, it's insulting to a butcher to even suggest that, yeah, I can teach you everything you need to know about this in 4 days. That's absurd. Like that's not going to happen.
Yeah, yeah. Do you even think about like, after lunch, people tend to slump and be tired and maybe make more mistakes? Like, do you think about that kind of ebb and flow of energy levels with what you're doing, or is it hands-on enough that you're like, we can kind of power through even if there's a little dip in energy?
It kind of goes with the cycle of what I was saying earlier with people. Um, Sometimes people will just sit down and you can kind of tell if someone doesn't want to work, and then you can usually tell if someone's raring to go. And if they're all just sitting and chilling, like for example, after lunch, give them some time to mill about, get a coffee, and then that gives Doug and I time to clean up things, wash knives, wash off the saw, get our own coffee. We're all people. We all kind of need the same thing through that course of the day. So yeah, just observing and again, our classes are structured, but not so much that we can't like take 10 minutes and just chill out for a little bit and talk about things that happened in the morning or the afternoon or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. We're getting some good questions in the chat here that I want to get to. Let me start with, let's start with this. Britt asked, curious what your student base primarily consists of: farmers, industry professionals. Do you teach classes for folks with no prior experience or passionate home cooks?
Yep, the answer is yes to all those. I would say early on, our biggest one, and this is really just because we advertise to that community, is homesteaders. So like first generation farmers or, people with very small holding, like 10 acres, 2 or 3 pigs. They just want to do it themselves.
Yeah.
And that we found in that community, there are also like foodies and chefs that took that route. So there are like small farmers that are chefs or foodies. Um, we come in contact with a lot of IT professionals, especially since COVID. We noticed that a lot of them were available to move out of the city. They were working remotely. They didn't have to be in the city anymore. They bought a small place outside of town, got some pigs, and then didn't know what to do with them. Uh, um, so but we also get people in the food industry. We've had chefs, culinary instructors, things like that. And sometimes there's farmers. And even recently, we've had more people that are interested in what we're talking about today that just want to come and see how we run our class.
Yeah.
We had a guy that ran a butcher shop, and he's butchering beef 4 out of 5 days a week, and he came to a beef workshop. And once I realized what he was doing, I was like, oh, you're just here to figure out how we structure these classes, which for his part was a good move. Like the butchering and the work, like he knew all of that. He didn't need me to show him how to, cut a ribeye. That was not why he was there. He was actually trying to pick up the nuances of what Doug and I do as far as structure and hosting a class and all that. So
Yeah,
it's all over the map as far as our clientele goes at the moment, which is fun. It leads to some interesting group dynamics, which is cool.
Yeah. So if you really want your questions answered, just register for one of Andy's classes is the way to go.
That's perfect. Yes, do that.
Let's dive back in real quick to some of the, I know people here are wondering about waivers and insurance and liability.
Yeah.
Brianna asked, how did you get the waiver that you all use for your classes? Did you have someone professionally draft it? Did you draft it? Did you have like a template?
Yeah, we kind of started with a template, but there aren't like a lot of templates that really work through, and I forget where it came from. But we made it very specific to us and our place and the work that we were doing here. So it was, I have a copy of it somewhere. We used to have a bunch of them printed out here, and we would have everyone sign it when they came in. And honestly, we forget most of the time. So I want to go to a place where they're signing it online when they register. I don't have that set up yet, but that's what I would really like to have. In Ohio, also, we have something called the Farm Bureau here in Ohio, and they have, it became part of the law where basically when you walk onto a farm, you are taking on the liability of your own person. So you are acknowledging that you're on a farm and there's machinery and things that are here that are not in the normal walk of life that can cause harm, blah, blah, blah. There's a whole thing about it. So we kind of we've never had to worry. I mean, we've never had any legal action taken against us. So I keep that kind of in my back pocket as another thing that we have, but the liability waiver is one. And no, we've never had a lawyer look at it, but we probably should. If everything were in an ideal world, we should have a lawyer look at it, but we haven't yet. But honestly, like, I don't know, some people are funny about it, but if I was rewriting it, I would probably use ChatGPT, to be honest with you. I would probably just pump in all my information into AI and have them write a very specific liability waiver for exactly what we're doing. I mean, that's kind of what that stuff is built for almost, I think.
Yeah, that's a really handy way to use ChatGPT to even find what some of the specifics of your state might be. Like you said, Ohio has a different setup than
Yeah.
than other states might. Yeah, yeah. Um, and then Grace asked, curious how this teaching approach changes with shorter class time frames. Our classes are only 2 to 3 hours with the option for multi-week series, and we cater largely to home cooks and foodies.
Right. We've I've done some short classes and demos where, Doug and I are talking to a group of people for like an hour. It was less hands-on, but that was the structure of the thing we were doing. I do occasionally I'll do like just a knife sharpening workshop,
Mm,
and it's usually just with 8 people. And it is, for me, I think it's good for like you just truncate everything. So in that case, I have them bring a knife. So they have their own knife that they're working on. So I don't need the raw material of a knife. But we do provide a set of whetstones that they get to use and take home. So they have this whole knife sharpening kit that they get. So
mm,
they've already got this built-in thing. They're bringing the knife that they're going to improve, and they're going to take home something. So that's already built in. And then in this case, again, with the question, I'm not sure exactly the context outside of home cooks and things, but it's always fun because I have them like try to cut a knife or cut a tomato with the knife that they bring. It
mm,
always squishes the knife, which is always fun, and everyone realizes their knife is dull. And then at the end of the workshop, hopefully after everyone has their knife sharp, and again, this workshop is, I think, 3 hours. Then we all make salsa, and it's all hand cut. So then they're cutting tomatoes and peppers and onions and garlic and all this stuff. So they get to actually experience the work that they did, and they have some payoff before they leave. Um, so I guess what I'm trying to say is get them some information and get them a little bit of dopamine, and then let them leave, basically. Let them have some good experience, whatever that is. I mean, I don't, if this is a butchering thing that the questioner is asking, just make it tiny and make it easy for people to succeed. Over the course of a 4-day workshop, there's tons of places for students in our system to have these fun moments where, they're doing something interesting, like making blood sausage or whatever it is. There are all these sort of dopamine hits through our workshop. So I don't want to reduce it just to like make people feel good, but that's kind of what you want, especially if you're doing a series. You need them to come in, have a cool experience quickly, have them leaving with a good experience, like a good thought in their head, and tell them about your next class, and then send them on their way. I don't,
yeah.
without knowing
And
specifics of that question, I don't know how else to answer it, I guess, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that is an amazing way to add value to the class too, and kind of take the skills outside the class, and
Yeah.
like with the knife skills especially. Are there any like I know I saw like the day one schedule list that you let people look at, but are there any other printed materials or anything that you give out to people to kind of structure it in that way, or for like a fun activity, or is everyone just bringing their own notebook and in charge of their own notes?
So most people do bring their own notebook, but we tell them first thing that they're going to take this stuff. They're going to get all this information, but then we send them a whole packet of information after the class.
mm,
Because what we found, we used to print it all out. It was like diagrams of pigs and where these different cuts come from and different recipes and all this stuff. And half of them got left here because people were too engaged with what we were doing, and they were distracted by the papers, and it just was clutter. So now it's all just digital, and we send a follow-up email that has all that information in it. And the follow-up email has a whole bunch, like there's different links to different videos that we've made that they get access to. There's 3 or 4 different PDFs that we send them that has different types of information. They get a whole Google Drive folder of recipes that are in spreadsheet form, especially for the curing. So there's a whole bunch of value added stuff that they get after the workshop. And then as part of that email, we also ask them to give us a Google review. So we're giving them this gift of all of this stuff. And then we're like, well, if you want to, you can give us a review too. So it's kind of like, it feels sometimes like a bribe.
No, I think that's really
but
smart.
yeah. It has helped with our Google review, like getting more reviews.
Yeah.
It has helped a lot.
And
Yeah.
so with that, do people know that they're getting all these bonus items when they sign up? Like, are you expressing that
No, but
at
that
registration?
would be a great thing to publicize. Yeah,
Well,
they
I think
don't.
that's great that, you're getting enough traction and then it feels like an added
Yeah.
bonus. And I know we've got a lot of questions about pricing and profit, and I might let Aubrey ask you a couple of those to kind of get into that for a second.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a great transition. So we had a question in here about how are you pricing your classes in general, and I would add on to that too. How are you kind of communicating to the customers the value of them? I know sometimes people look at the prices and there's a little sticker shock, but
Yeah.
I'm sure we all know like there's so much behind that people don't understand. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So pricing has always been really tough for me because I love doing all this stuff. And if I didn't have to make a living, I would just teach these classes for free. I honestly, um, so that's a bad thing. So, especially if you're trying to run a business. So my wife is actually, and Doug, both of them have always sort of pushed towards higher prices. So like, just to give some context, when we first started, you could come to a 3-day workshop at our farm for, I don't know, I think when we started like $250, $300 for 3 whole days, which
wow.
is absurd thinking about it now. Um, but at the time, it was really just like a supplemental thing in our farm system. Like we were raising other animals and doing other stuff. So it was like a fun thing that Doug and I got to do that actually made a little bit of money. Um, and now for a 3-day workshop, we don't do 3-day workshops here anymore, but 3-day workshops when we travel, they're anywhere from I think on the low end, like 700 upwards of 1,000.
Mm,
Um, and to get from that $300 to like $1,000 was hard for me because when I was learning this stuff, I didn't have enough money to like go somewhere and pay for a 3-day class that expensive plus hotel or travel or whatever that was. But it became really, um, I guess it sort of became real for me when I really started to pay attention to how much information we were giving people and realizing that some of the information we were giving people is not really accessible in other ways.
mm,
And YouTube is awesome for learning some things, but it doesn't allow you to put your hands on things and have two skilled instructors there helping you. And by the way, the skilled instructors are also making you 3 meals a day. And for dinner, you get beer and wine and you get coffee all day and you can sit down whenever you want and you're meeting all these cool people. And like I'm just adding all these layers of this experience on. So I think even at the price point now, I think our workshops are a deal.
yeah.
Where I didn't always feel that way. Because at first it was just like, well, these poor farmers need to learn how to butcher their pigs. They don't have any money. To now, like again, going back to the clientele, the people that are coming to these workshops have the money, and I have no problem saying it's absolutely worth the money.
Yeah.
As far as how other people should price their class, I mean, obviously you need to make sure that the animal is paid for and that your time is paid for and that hopefully you have money to cover like we pay to keep the lights on in here and all of that stuff. You have to make sure all of that stuff is covered. Um, and then see what that number is and then go from there, like whatever you're comfortable with making, it's different. We live in a rural Ohio. It is not expensive to live here. It would be a lot harder to do what we're doing if we were living, in San Francisco. Like I can't even imagine how much we'd have to charge if we were out there. So um, where we are also goes into that. And just as a side note, when we travel to other people's farms, they're the ones in charge of setting the price. They owe
Mm,
us a set dollar amount, and then they can set the price to figure out how much of our cost is going to be offset by ticket prices, or maybe all of it, or they want to offset our cost completely and pay for their pig. So we allow them to set the price so that their financial goals are kind of taken care of as well, hopefully.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know this isn't quite your model, but even just your perspective, I'd be curious. Britt asked about pricing classes with the same profit margin or adjusting that profit margin based on like the technical level or time or skills. Um,
Yeah, I think that's a good idea to do that. We have been fortunate enough to be busy during the time that we want to work to not have to parse that stuff out, to be perfectly honest. Um, I said we don't do 3-day classes here. We do a 3-day beef class, but all of our other classes that we do here are 4-day charcuterie classes, which are way more intense, way more information. The food we're serving at these classes is a lot better. I mean, I shouldn't say a lot better, but we're in charge of it, so we know it's going to be good. Um, but yeah, I mean, parsing it out would be good. The one real downside to where we are in Ohio is we're not really close to a lot of urban centers, so
mm,
or people that for that matter. So it's hard for us to get people out here for small classes, like 1-day classes, because oftentimes they're traveling. Like the next class we're having here, we're gonna have people from Arizona and Oregon and North Carolina and South Carolina. Um, so they're coming a long distance. So it makes way more sense for those people to be here for a bigger chunk of time. They get more for their time to travel. Um, but we don't, I mean, we parse out a little bit as far as like a 3-day pig class versus a 4-day charcuterie class, but beyond that, we don't segment our skill level stuff too much. We
yeah.
might in the future if we find that there are a lot more people that want to learn very technical stuff, but we haven't yet.
Yeah. Shockingly, we only have a few minutes left, so if you have any other burning questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Another good one that I saw in here, Cody asked, do you have any books or video content you would recommend so that I could speak more intelligently about what I'm doing? I feel comfortable teaching about how to do things, but would like to be able to bring more to the table, pun intended. Thank you for that, Cody. I love it.
Yeah. What is it? I mean, watching anybody do anything and I mean, butchery wise, and just hear the words they're saying when they describe things. When Doug and I started this, we didn't know like the Latin terms for all the muscle groups. But over time, like if we have a doctor in the group, or a health professional, we're kind of we're not ashamed to ask them like, what's this muscle in Latin, or what's this bone called? Or I mean, so we've actually probably irritated some medical professionals over time because we just sort of badger them with questions about things, um, as far as medical terminology, which in some ways doesn't necessarily help people understand things, but it does give a certain um, feel to the educator's um, informational prowess, I guess. So, yeah, just watch videos of people. I don't know that I have anything specific. I mean, you could read like Adam Danforth's butchering books have a lot of good technical information. It's got the Latin words. He does a good job describing things in that. So those I would recommend reading if you haven't. And then just work on using a thesaurus and figuring out new words you could use. Um, and then there's also like the down to earth sort of thing. Like, um, if something that you're feeling when you're butchering feels like a marshmallow, say that to people. They can associate pretty easily if you use things that most people know. And it doesn't have to be hyper technical or academic, but if you tell people like these sheets of fat look like sheets of paper, they understand what that means. And you're not really using, um, you know, college vocabulary, but it's still understandable, which is the end goal.
Yeah, and I really liked your point too about, there's a difference between a class that is to train apprentice butchers to be butchers and a class that's
Mhm.
maybe more for the general public or for home cooks or, homesteaders. And that I'm curious kind of your perspective, and maybe you've spoken to it, but in the difference between we're trying to get you all the skills that you need versus we're just trying to get you excited so that you want to keep learning more. We're just sparking the curiosity, really.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the goal of this class, more than you know exactly how to do this, but you know enough and you're excited enough to go learn more yourself.
Right. Yeah, usually we're lighting fires under people more than like, I mean, we do teach them things, but oftentimes people leave the workshop, um, email us later and say, I just got my first pig or I just butchered my first pig, and they're just excited to share that they did these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, oftentimes it's just like a motivating force. And at the workshops, I mean, this should go without saying, but Doug and I have fun during these things, and it doesn't, when people are around us at these workshops, it doesn't feel like we're working, even though we are, this is our job, but we're conversing with people, eating good food, having fun, whatever, butchering. When our students are in that position, they're just having fun. It's not necessarily like they're also learning, and then they leave thinking that everything we did was fun, which hopefully is what they're getting out of it. Because if it's fun, they're going to do it more.
Yeah, that's so much of experiential education, is the associations and the confidence and the joyful memories that you can pair with the learning. Yeah. And on that note, Meredith had a good question. What's your favorite part of the classes? Like your personal
Favorite
favorite
part
part.
of the classes? Um, Geez, I think, and there's a whole bunch of good stuff, but as a whole, getting people to see beginning to end, which is not something people get to do very often. Like we're starting with a live pig, and by the end of the workshop, we're eating prosciutto, not from that pig, but from other pigs. So they get to see a whole spectrum from husbandry, live pig walking around in the woods, to what that yields on a charcuterie board, years later. So, I mean, that's not just one moment, but that's something that a lot of people don't get to experience, like, ever. In a smaller scale, people experience that in a garden. They get to, start a tomato from seed, and they watch the plant grow, and then they see the tomato ripen, then they take it inside and they make a BLT with it. That's a smaller version of that. But with an animal, people just don't see that process very often. And then the other one is just the food aspect. People are really shocked to experience how much Doug and I like to eat well and how much we talk about food at these workshops, which we think is really funny because that's the whole reason we're doing it, is for food. But we're always talking about food. We always try to prepare good food for them. And people are often shocked at the quality of food they get while they're here. And that has always just been a fun thing for me, just for them to sort of their eyes open, like, oh yeah, I guess you should make good food if you're going to be butchering a pig. So that's probably the other one.
Yeah. And we're just about out of time. We could talk about this, I think, all day. But you also mentioned, when we talked before, you mentioned that you debrief your classes afterwards. Can you talk just a little bit about like the process after your classes?
You mean after everyone's left,
Mm-hmm.
or yeah, I mean, almost all of our workshops end with a big charcuterie board, so everyone gets to, experience that, and their bellies are full, and then they leave. And then usually I give like a day or two, and I just send out a big email that says, "Thanks for coming. I mean, we were so happy to have you here." And usually there's some sort of like side joke that the group knows about that I'll reference, whatever it may be. Like this last workshop we did, I had lost my voice and I could barely talk most of the class, so I probably should have written something about that. But anyway, something about, hope everyone got home safely. And then they know that we're going to share the resources with them, because throughout the class, I will reference um, the recipes or something like that. And I'll say, you're going to get this, so you don't have to write it down, blah, blah, blah. And then I just sort of list out those things, how to use them, what they're for, a couple videos. And then at the end, we'd love to stay in touch, make sure if you ever do any of these things, let us know. We'd love to see what you're up to. And if you feel like giving us a 5-star review, the link's right here. And I put the link in the email so they can just click on it. And then if you don't want to give us a 5-star review, don't click on the link, sort of thing. And then peace out, and hope to hear from them again.
Yeah, and I've seen your website. It looks like a lot of people click that link. You guys have some great reviews up
We've
there.
worked on that a lot.
Yeah.
Recently we've really, and I think I am not a search engine guru or anything like that, but I do think it has helped with our Google search results. And I don't have any proof of that, but I feel like the more people that you get reviews from, the more interactions with Google, and it kind of bumps us up a little bit. At least
Yeah,
that's what I think.
I was actually just going to mention that we did a little blog on promoting your farm or your business in the age of AI, and getting testimonials is a big one, because whatever
Yeah.
the algorithms are, they're looking for proof that the business is real, and testimonials are one way to do that. So it
Yeah.
can feel hard, especially for farmers and butchers who don't tend to want to solicit that, but
Yeah.
it really can
Hmm.
make a difference for your findability.
Yeah. It feels like it has helped us quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing. Andy, like I said, I wish we could keep going for hours with so many more things that we could talk about, but we're at the hour. So first of all, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your time, your expertise. Yeah, it's just been such a great conversation. We hope to have many more lowdowns on the topic of butchery and butchers supporting butchers. So we're really pleased to kick this off with you, Andy. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. It was great.
Nice. And just before we wrap up, we wanted to share a few last things here. Meredith, if you will just share your screen real quick. Like I mentioned, this is recorded. We'll share it up on YouTube, and we'll send a follow-up email later this week with a link to be able to watch the recording, as well as links to Andy's website and any other resources that we mentioned today. And then I'll give a brief pitch. If you haven't heard about our Good Meat Finder, or you're not on here yet, you definitely should be. This is a new directory that we launched within the last year. It's the only one we know of that is specifically designed for value-based meat businesses, and not just farms, but also butcher shops, restaurants, and retail. So it's a one-stop shop for consumers to find meat that matches their values. So encourage anyone who's on here to go ahead and sign up for the Good Meat Finder. It takes just a few minutes. We tried to make it as quick and easy as possible. And we're able to offer these lowdowns for free thanks to generous donations from people like you. We really appreciate your support. If you enjoyed today's conversation and you want to take the next step in supporting our programming, feel free to make a donation to the Good Meat Project. Any size, big or small, has an impact, so we appreciate it. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next time. We've got a couple exciting lowdowns in the cooker right now, so we'll be sharing details on those. So keep an eye on your inbox and your social media, and we will see you again soon.